Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be standing here in front of you all. And today I'm going to be sharing what I think hopefully are practical steps on how you go about developing the benefits of, or understanding the benefits of an effective workplace culture. And to help put this in perspective a little bit, I'm going to share with you my story as to how I came here, what I learned along the way, and what I write about, speak about, and consult on. So let's begin. The benefits of an effective culture. So my background real quick. I started recruiting investment bankers and placing them in hedge funds. And then I decided to leave the city and I started Thomas Tellman. We began as a legal recruitment company, placing solicitors in private practice. And what happened was that in 2019, I placed 2 solicitors at a law firm in the city here. And within their notice period, they both felt frustrated with the culture, frustrated with what they were experiencing, and they said, "Look, Andre, get me out of here, please." At the time, I was on holiday, and I thought, right, look, Andre, this isn't the first time you've come across a situation like this. So what should we do? So I thought, right, I'm going to rethink the way how recruitment is done. And it led me to really getting an understanding and getting under the bonnet of what law firms are really experiencing when they're talking about, or when they're thinking about attracting and retaining talent. So I became a scientist, really. For lockdown, the world slowed down, and it gave me the opportunity to really understand what was happening. I had a client base already, which was brilliant, so I was able to speak to them about some of the issues that they're experiencing, and it helped me to form, or they helped me to form a solution, which I'll tell you a little bit about shortly. But what was really interesting is that I discovered a number of things, but some of the key things I discovered was this. There was a focus that firms had on developing relationships with their clients, nurturing those relationships. Naturally so, because of course, no clients, no business, right? But equally, there was not the same level of focus when it came to their employees. So that was the first discovery. The second discovery was that when they were interviewing, what I noticed was that there was a focus on PQ experience and not so much on aligned values. And so what does that mean? Aligned values, what sort of questions should you be asking when you're thinking about, well, okay, does the person in front of me share this type of values that we as an organization hold? Well, they're the sorts of questions that you need to be asking to make sure that you are actually hiring the right person, even though they potentially have the skills. And that was lacking within their recruitment process. And the third thing I noticed, ironically, was that a lot of law firms wanted to move away from using recruitment companies. So quite often you will go onto their website and you have the vacancies listed, and at the bottom, maybe some of you might be experienced, might have this on your website at the moment, no recruitment agencies, please. So they wanted to move away from using recruitment agencies, but at the same time, they struggled with how they go about attracting and retaining talent. So, as I said, I started to think about how we can formulate a solution. But before I go into that, we've got a little quick task that I would love you guys to do. Could you pull out your phones for me, please? And if we go to vvox.com, now, this is completely anonymous, so your answers, I will have no idea who's answering. But what I would ask is if you can be really honest in your answers, please, okay? So we go to vvox.com, and then we're going to type in this code. Give you all a few minutes to do that. And just as a show of hands, out of interest, Any managing partners here? Wonderful. Any equity partners? Great. HR directors? Good. Anybody I left out? Oh, okay. So, we've got the code in. You got a problem with it? Sorted? All good? No? Is it me or is it your phone? Okay. So, we're going to move. We've got 3 questions that we're going to ask. Or I'm going to ask. Oh, let's go back. So, yeah, my fella up there. First question is, what is it like to work for your firm? So you've got 4 options. 4 options: excellent, good, fair, or poor. So in your opinion, what is it like to work at your firm? I'll give you a minute. $84. Wonderful.
Is it thinking for yourself, or is it thinking about
No, it's your opinion, all of your own individual opinion as to what it's like to work for your firm. So how do you feel about working at your own firm? To rephrase. Let's have a look at the results of that, please. Ooh, 45% saying excellent, 50% saying good, only 3% saying fair, 0% saying poor. Good. 51. Let's have question 2, please. Can we show up question 2, please? So tell me, what would your employees say it's like to work at your firm? 4 questions, 4 answers: excellent, good, fair, or not sure. Give you a minute or 2. Wonderful. Everybody has given their results in. Could we have the answers to that, please? Oh, so 20% excellent, 71% good, fair, 7%, and not sure, 0%. That's interesting. But, oh, it switched. Okay. So guys, just on the back of this, before I even look at question 3, we've already got a bit of a problem, haven't we? You think that it's excellent to work at your firm. Ask you the same question about what your employees think, it's considerably less. It's at 20%. So let's go to question 3. Please. What does your website say it's like to work at your firm? Yeah. Your opinion, 13% neck and neck with employees. Mixture of both. No opinion on your website. Well, that's interesting. 40%, and we're not sure what is on our website. So, let me try and conclude this for you in terms of what this data is revealing. We've got a disparity between what you think your employees, or what you think it's like to work at your firm, and asking you the same question about what your employees think it's like to work at the firm, and it's different. It's quite a gap. And then when it comes to what's on your website, well, most of the information that should be on your website is actually not there at all. And this gap is costing you potentially thousands and thousands of pounds. And I'm going to show you why. So let's bear in mind those stats as I continue speaking. So what happened was that the managing partner of the firm that I was working with, I had the opportunity to go and meet him some months afterwards. And that was the face. That's not him, but that was the face. He was pretty frustrated with the situation that he found himself in. He realized, oh my goodness, I've lost I've lost a couple of lawyers that I thought was going to help take the firm forward. And it had an impact on the rest of the team. It was frustrating for him. It was frustrating in terms of financially as well. And to be fair to him, he wanted to do something about it, which was great. And it made me think about, right, okay, well, what can we do to help? So let me talk a little bit about some of the consequences that he was facing. He had realized, when we did some analysis, that 40% of his office were quiet quitters. So these are individuals that are doing what they need to do to get by. They're not really busting a gut. And they certainly don't really turn up to events that the firm might be hosting. They're not really that bothered. They're definitely speaking to other recruitment agencies, and they're thinking about their next opportunity. These are your quiet quitters. They were costing him £350,000, and this is a 50-people firm. The next consequence for him that he was facing was he had an increase in turnover. And no, I was speaking to a lady this morning, and she was talking about her experience of when she joined a law firm. And what happened is that within her notice period, she realized it was time for her to leave. And it set off a bit of a chain reaction, so other people within the firm also wanted to leave. So there was an increase in turnover, considerable increase. We're looking at £200,000 of costs of turnover. And when we look at replacing people or replacing solicitors, we just think about the agency fee. But there are intangible and there's tangible costs that need to be considered. And we're talking about, when that vacancy is open for a certain amount of time, that individual is not billing, you have lost productivity, you've got training costs that you've lost, and as a result, you're looking at a figure like that for a 50-people firm. The other big issue for him was damaged reputation. And this is interesting because for a few of the people that left his firm, they felt, right, we're going to write on Glassdoor, we're going to leave a review, and it wasn't particularly great. And of course, these days, when people are looking for a new job, they decide to do their research, of course, and Glassdoor is one of those sites that they tend to look at. And what he noticed was there was a drop in quality of applicants that was applying for his vacancies, and so vacancies took a longer time to fill. That had the impact of almost £200,000. So he realized, look, you know what, I've got to do something about this because it's hindering growth. So I came up with a solution, and it's a very simple diagram, really. We have employee experience, and we have candidate experience. In the middle, we have culture. And let's face it, folks, we live in what I would describe as the experience economy, right? Even when we go to the cinema, we expect to be served and have an experience that is way beyond just watching a movie. We want to be served. We're thinking about, like, you know, not just the film, but just what's the experience like, and how is it making a difference to me and my enjoyment? So I ask you to think about what is your candidate experience and what is your employee experience, and what is that like? And what I want to do is I'm going to share with you the steps that I think you need to think about, or certainly put in place, to help create the right kind of experience that you need for your organization, for your firm. So let's have a look at a employer brand definition. So the purpose of employer branding is to attract and retain the right talent. Therefore, what you need to consider is how you are perceived internally and externally. So if we remember the poll that we just did, your view, what you think about your firm, and we had 50-odd% saying it was excellent, that's all well and good. But it doesn't really matter. It's not what you think, it's what your employees think. And interestingly, the data revealed on the poll that you thought that your employees thought less of what you think it was like to work at the firm. So that disparity potentially is costing you money, because your employer brand is not really truly reflective of what it is like, what's it like to work at your firm. So remember, it's about how you are perceived that's important, not necessarily what you as the senior leadership team think is important. So what do other people think about you? What do your employees think about the firm? What's the external stories that are being told about your firm? What is it that's being told, and how do you counteract the stories that, if they are not the kinds of stories that you want to hear or read? So now we're going to move into how to create the best employee experience. How do we do that? Before I even reveal, I'll tell you what, I'll reveal it. The first thing we want to do is we want to ask our employees about their experience. What is it like to work for your firm? Many firms have annual surveys. It's okay, it's a good start. I would suggest at least twice a year, my bad. No, twice a month is ridiculous, isn't it? But twice a year. And I will go as far as saying that in your one-to-one meetings, be consistent in how you're asking questions and gathering data about what they are experiencing in terms of what they feel about their career development, what they feel about the leadership team, what they feel about their environment. It's about consistently collecting data. And just as a tip, what you could do when you go back to your offices is think about, right, okay, instead of us looking to implement anything, let me just listen. Let me just walk the floor and see how people are interacting with one another. What's their communication style like? Is it aggressive? Is it friendly? Observe. Observing is a really good thing to do, to get a feel for what people are experiencing. So we want to ask questions consistently. We then need to analyze the data. must analyze the data. What is the data revealing? Are there any correlations? Are there any differences between departments? Is one department doing things different to another department? What's the data revealing? And then let's take action on the data. I'm working with a firm at the moment, and one of the big things is that they've done surveys, and the team were a bit frustrated because they didn't know what the results were. They like, well, we've not heard, we do these surveys and we don't quite know what the result is. We're not sure whether our voice is actually being heard. For them, it didn't feel like it was being heard. But so it's important that whatever is being revealed is shared, good, bad, or ugly. I mean, sometimes we have to hear bad news and we need to be thinking about get broad shoulders perhaps and just take the bad and say, right, we need to do something about this. So taking action is critical to making sure that we are building up the best employee experience for our firm. So these are the practical steps that you need to take in making sure that you have a system that you can analyze and make sure that you can take action and you can make the right decisions when you're setting goals, business objectives, when you're looking at increasing salaries or not, improving benefits. You need to have data. And you need to be asking your team about their experience in order for you to make the right decisions. So that's looking at how to create the best employee experience. Now we're going to move to the KPIs that you need to track to make sure that we're going in the right direction. No point doing this analysis and we're not sure about, are we moving in the correct direction? So these are the 3 important KPIs that you need to track. Employee Net Promoter Score. Some of you may be familiar with this term, but if you're not, what it is how willing is one of your employees prepared to refer a colleague, ex-colleague, a friend, a family member to the firm? So how willing is an employee prepared to refer a colleague, ex-colleague, a friend, or a family member to the firm? We want that employee Net Promoter Score to increase. The more people you have in your firm as ambassadors, the better. That's what will keep your recruitment costs low. The next thing is employee turnover. Employee turnover per department. Some departments turnover may be higher than others, but this is a critical KPI to track. So what is your employee turnover? And keeping a regular track of that at least every 6 months. And then engagement data. Engagement data is critical to knowing what people are experiencing, what the productivity levels are like, whether people are engaged or not. And we mentioned earlier with the firm that I previously placed a couple of solicitors at, their quiet quitters was at 40%. That is incredibly high. That means that engagement wasn't there for most of the firm. And so engagement data is critical. So there you have it. We were looking at employee experience. We looked at how to create the best experience for your firm and how to have the right system in place in order for you to make sure that you're tracking, collecting data and then analyzing that data and then tracking the key KPIs. Now we're going to move to how to create the best candidate experience. And this is really interesting because what I find really exciting about this is that we can move away. I mean, I don't know, you'd probably be quite pleased if you can move away from using recruitment agencies and not having to spend up to 35% per placement. And so the way to do that is to look to develop a proactive recruitment strategy. And what you do is you build out talent pools. And when you build out talent pools, it means that what you will have is a database of individuals that you can engage that are potentially right for your company. And when opportunities come up, you can bring them in for an interview. And this is what works, and this is what we currently do as part of the way how we help companies develop their employer brand. So developing proactive recruitment strategies is a fantastic strategy to use. The next thing is to create a compelling employer value proposition. So your EVP quite often is usually really generic. You know, there's not much difference from when you look at a job description, when you look at a paralegal, or when you're looking at a partner. So what we want to make sure is that the EVP, employer value proposition, is specific, it's compelling, it's realistic. It means that the person that's reading it feels compelled to take action to apply for your vacancy. So therefore, it needs to speak to them. So your job descriptions need to be thought through to make sure that, you know, you are telling the right story for the right individual that you want to apply for your role. And then this is critical, focusing on the first 90 days. One of the things that I think as a recruiter years ago now is that when we heard that a candidate was being placed, we know that they're in a very vulnerable position because they're going into a new company, energetic, want to start doing the work, but they're also checking to make sure that what was told to them about the business is real, that it's true. And if not, they'll be ready to leave. And so as recruiters, you'll be almost tracking and speaking to that individual to make sure that they are happy. And so when you employ someone, it's important that your induction isn't just a day, but you actually have a bit of a strategy as to making sure that they're going to stay, that you're engaging them within the first 90 days. So you may think, look, you know what, first day, here's a gift, here's a card. We're going to take you out for dinner with the managing partner in your first week. In your first month, you're going to have a personal development plan. These are different things that you can do to help embed the individual into the firm and to make them feel part of your organization. The first 90 days is critical because that's when you can potentially lose them. You would have spent a lot of time and money in recruiting them. That's the last thing you want to do, is lose them. And now the KPIs to track your candidate experience. Time to hire. How long does it take for you to hire that individual? If it's taking 3 months, it's too long. If you had a proactive recruitment strategy, you can reduce that down to approximately 4 weeks. It's a game changer. Time to hire is important. Number of quality applicants. How many good people are applying for your vacancies? And finally, what's your 6 months churn? Earlier we looked at turnover. The 6 months churn is a shorter metric for you to consider when you're thinking about the candidate experience. As I said, the first 90 days is crucial for when people join the firm. So if people are leaving within 6 months, you've got a problem. You've got a problem that needs to be addressed. And so, quick wins when you do this sort of stuff that you want to be able to take advantage of and feel that, like, you know, we're winning, that we're not just going round in circles. And so when I was working with the firm that lost the 2 lawyers and we started implementing things, improvement in motivation was almost instant. When you gather data from your employees and they feel that we're going in the right direction and their voice is being heard, they're instantly motivated. And you're going to notice that people want to socialize more. Because your quiet quitters, they don't socialize. They can't wait to go home. Come to work, do what they have to do, and leave. But when they're engaged, they're up for having a good time as well. And people then become more willing to refer. And what you want is your employees to be ambassadors of your firm. And that's your employee net promoter score. That's what you want to be seeing increase. So they're your quick wins. That you will see almost within a month. So conclusion. First, your employer brand is your competitive advantage. It's what's going to set you apart from your competitors, no question. The second thing is failing to develop your employer brand can cause a toxic culture to emerge, recruitment costs to increase, and potentially damage your reputation. And finally, by measuring and managing your employer brand, you can save thousands of pounds and position your firm as an employer of choice. And ultimately, what you're doing here is by developing your employer brand, you're putting the systems in place to ensure that you are measuring and managing your employer brand. If you do not have a system, you need one. If you're not regularly collecting data and understanding what the employee experience is like, what the candidate experience is like, not only would you need one, I think you would want one, because it will save you a fortune. So, if you wish, you can do a free assessment, which I offer. You can just scan the code, and you'll receive a report, about 1,200 words, and it will give you a really good overview as to, it will give you a snapshot as to what your current employer brand is, and what you need to do to improve and optimize. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andre.
Sorry.
Thank you, Andre, for your observations there. Has anybody got any questions for Andre? We've got a couple of roving mics that are available to be able to go through. So, a lady at the front here.
Hey,
Hi.
Laura Jimenez, Conscious Solutions. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about the data coming in from staff and how that data is shared. Because I've from personal experience, I've worked in places, they gather the data, and like you were saying, does anything actually happen with it? Do you think it's important having the right person in your firm kind of managing that project? So maybe more of like someone with an empathetic style rather than might be the managing partner who might be more data driven to actually manage this sort of a change project?
Very, very good question, because you're absolutely right. It makes a massive difference, and it's something that has to happen, is that there needs to be ownership, someone to take ownership of how this project's going to move forward. And it's, often, the managing partner wants to know what's happening, and they perhaps would like to be the person that ultimately is going to make the decision. But they're also busy doing lawyering and doing other things that they need to do. So it's important that there is somebody who is championing this, or a small committee. So, maybe 2 or 3 people that think, look, this is something that is important for the firm, and we're prepared to help project manage it. So 100%, it's better to have someone doing it. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't work with a firm that doesn't have somebody who is internally making sure that there's things that we are looking to improve are actually happening. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to follow on from that. You actually do need the managing partner to sponsor it, though, because I think if you don't have the managing partner and the senior leadership team actually believing this, all of them, would you say that is difficult?
Well, I think
Your experience of that.
yeah, well, firstly, it's critical for the senior leadership team to be 100% behind what we're doing here. And they need to have a desire for change. But you won't change unless you want to, right? If you you decide, look, you know what, I want to get fit, you realize that there's certain things that you need to do. I need to go to the gym, I need to work out, I need to eat less, etc. So that's what you need to do to get to the point where you want to be. So what's going to make the managing partner, the senior leadership team think about, well, look, how am I going to move from point A to point B? Well, okay, so we're now a £3 million firm turnover. We want to be a £6 million turnover in the next 2-3 years. Okay, so what does our people strategy look like? Oh, right, well, you know, we've taken on a few people, some have stayed, some haven't. Well, what's our engagement data revealing? Oh, well, we don't have any engagement data. Well, we need to have some engagement data to make sure that we know what our people are experiencing. So it's critical in your decision making as to how you're going to move the firm forward. So I would have thought that it's important as making sure that you are developing relationships with clients and building and nurturing those relationships so you can win business. It's equally important that you have a system in place to understand what it is that your culture is doing, because otherwise it will just literally manage itself. And I think there's a better way of doing it. Does that make sense?
Okay, any others? There's another. Do you want to have the mic? Thank you.
Hi, you talked about engagement data. Can you give me some examples of the kind of engagement data that you have found most useful?
Yeah, so what we do is that taking surveys twice a month are important. And also one-to-one interviews are really, really crucial, because one-to-one interviews gets under the skin of what people are feeling and experiencing. Surveys are a good start, but the one-to-one interviews are brilliant. And even running focus groups can also help to understand the experience.
Just to add to that, if I can as well, we've got a session later on, one of the breakout sessions, which is all about employee engagement, both testing and measuring and improving as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, we've got a session on that later on as well, which our next speaker actually, from PDW, one of his colleagues, is going to be running that session a little bit later on. But there are other things that are out there in terms of employee engagement surveys. PDW run one of those, but there's others such as the Happiness Index. So if you've not heard of the Happiness Index, then you might want to Google that and have a look at that as well. Have we got any other questions? There's a lady at the back over there. We've got a mic over this side. And if you're happy to, if you want to say who you are and where you're from as well.
Thanks, Andy. Laura Squires from Consortium on the Marketing. It leads into something that Laura said and also what one of the other ladies said. So there's two parts, Andre. Obviously, lawyers are hugely busy people. The reality of them rolling all of this out in one go is probably quite unlikely. So what's the one thing that they could do going away from today? And secondly, to the point about you've got to have managing partners and senior exec team behind this, have you seen examples, which is what we've tried to do on the marketing side of things, where you work on a department, so you kind of demonstrate how it's going to work, why it's a good idea, so you could pick the conveyancing department, really nail the culture in that department and how they recruit, what their employment value proposition is, all of that stuff just in that one department to demonstrate how it could work firm-wide. Have you seen that work at all?
But how can the department improve its culture? Just per department? No,
so if you're struggling, because some of the guys in this room will be from firms with hundreds of people in, so affecting change can take a long time. So could an approach be, or have you seen an approach where they've been driven by departments? So a department has taken the lead to say, well, we're going to change the culture in our department.
Yeah.
Demonstrated how it's improved, the
sure.
enjoyment of the staff and therefore the profitability of the department, the success of the department, so that then the senior management team buy into it and see why they should roll it out firm-wide.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I've come across that before, and my view is this. My view is that when it comes to culture change, it needs to come from the top, particularly in a hierarchical structured firm. It's not a flat structure like a consultancy firm. This is usually managing partner, senior partners, etc., and going down. And therefore, yeah, as somebody in another department may feel, look, you know what, we're going to try this, we're going to champion this and see how it goes, and we could potentially roll it out. I think that would work better if we're talking about, you know, a PLC perhaps, you know, with thousands of people. But if we're talking about a firm that may be anything up to 250 people, I think, my view is that it really needs to come from the top. It needs to be seen. You're developing your employer brand. Why? Because you think that, well, you believe that this is our USP. This is going to help us attract and retain the right people. This is central to how we're going to grow as a firm. And I think that if that's not the message coming out, then, you know, at some point, the department might, you know, there might be a bit of a disagreement as to how things still move forward. Maybe.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I think, you know, to echo there, I think, you know, you do need to have an army of people out there reinforcing, echoing the brand, creating the culture within there. But, you know, the next session we're going to be going on to with Jim is going to be about defining organisational identity, and which I think is really, really important. So we need to have this identity as a whole, but what we can't have is lots of different little bits of culture all over the firm itself. So it does need to be aligned as well, and we'll explore that in a little bit more detail shortly. Do we have any other questions? Just one down here from Rory.
Thanks. You mentioned a proactive recruitment strategy. I wonder if you could just give us some very quick tips on how you build up a pool of potential candidates.
Okay, so good question. So how do you build a proactive recruitment strategy? So I would think about your skills that you need over the next 2 to 3 years as opposed to what vacancy do we need filling here right now. So let's think about skills, let's think about it in the future. And then let's think about how we can potentially engage those individuals that potentially have the skills. But instead of looking to invite people for interviews, recruit all year round. And in the same way how you potentially will be running events to attract potential clients to come for you to do business with, you can have a similar approach with regards to your recruitment strategy. So you may think, right, you know what, once a quarter, we're going to have an event at our office and we're going to invite loads of people that potentially could be good within our firm as employees, and we're just going to share with them what it's like to work here. It can be a cheese on wine, it can be whatever it is that you feel is important. But you can think about different ways of how you can engage people early, ahead of your competition, and invite them in for an interview when the opportunity arises. But what you're ultimately doing is building trust with individuals that could potentially be right for your firm. So that's about thinking proactively as opposed to just waiting for somebody to hand in their notice and then say, right, we now need to recruit. Does that help?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Andre, thank you very much for your insights there.
Cheers.